Welcome to part 6. We're at page 46 out of 87 pages. There are 87 pages in this book. Mugglewump, remember Mugglewump? Mugglewump and his family longed to escape from the cage in Mr. Twit's garden and go back to the African jungle where they came from. They hated Mr. and Mrs. Twit for making their lives so miserable. They also hated them for what they did to the birds every Tuesday and Wednesday. Do you remember what they did to the birds? Remember they put the sticky stuff on the tree and caught them and put them in a pie. "Fly away, birds," they used to shout, jumping about in the cage and waving their arms. "Don't sit on that big dead tree. It's just been smeared all over with sticky glue. Go and sit somewhere else." Look at them screaming away. Every Tuesday and Wednesday they did that. But these were English birds and they couldn't understand the African language the monkeys were speaking. So they took no notice and went on using the big dead tree and getting caught for Mr. Twit's bird pie. Then one day a truly magnificent bird flew down out of the sky and landed on the monkey cage. "Good heavens!" cried all the monkeys together. "It's a roly-poly bird. What on earth are you doing over in England, roly-poly bird?" Like the monkeys, the roly-poly bird came from Africa, and he spoke the same language that they did. He said, "I've come for a holiday. I like to travel." He fluffed his marvellous feathers and looked down rather grandly at the monkeys. "For most people," he went on, "flying away on holiday is very expensive, but I can fly anywhere in the world for nothing." "Do you know how to talk to the English birds?" Mugglewump asked him. "Of course I do," Roly-Poly Bird said. "It's no good going to a country and not knowing the language. We all know that, don't we?" "Then we must hurry," said Mugglewump. "Today is Tuesday, and over there you can already see the revolting Mr. Trump up the ladder, painting sticky glue on all the branches of the big dead tree. This evening when the birds come to roost, you must warn them not to perch on the tree, or they will be made into bird pie." That evening the roly-poly bird flew around and around the dead tree, saying this poem. "There's sticky stick stuff all over the tree. If you land in the branches, you'll never get free. So fly away, stay up high, or you'll finish up tomorrow in a hot bird pie." No bird pie for Mr. Twit. The next morning, when Mr. Twit came out with his huge basket to snatch all the birds from the big dead tree, there wasn't a single one on it. They were all sitting on top of the monkey cage. The roly-poly bird was there as well, and Mugglewump and his family were inside the cage, and the whole lot of them were laughing at Mr. Twit. Here's Mr. Twit. You see it? Oh, that was a short chapter. That was one chapter. I like Roald Dahl. He's very clever the way he plays with chapters. Still no bird pie for Mr. Twit. Mr. Twit wasn't going to wait for another week for his bird pie supper. He loved bird pie. It was his favourite meal. So that very same day he went after the birds again. This time he smeared all the top bars of the monkey cage with sticky glue, as well as the branches of the big dead tree. "Now I'll get you, whichever one you sit on." The monkeys crouched inside the cage watching all this, and later on, when the roly-poly bird came swooping in for an evening chat, they shouted out, "Don't land on our cage, roly-poly bird. It's covered in sticky glue. So is the tree. And that evening, as the sun went down and all the birds came in again to roost, the roly-poly bird flew around and around, round and round the monkey cage, and the big dead tree, saying again, "There's sticky stuff now on the cage and the tree. If you land on either, you'll never get free. So fly away, stay up high, or you'll finish up tomorrow as a hot bird pie." Next chapter, Mr. and Mrs. Twit go off to buy guns. The next morning, when Mr. Twit came out with his huge basket, not a single bird was sitting on either the monkey cage or the big dead tree. They were all perched happily on the roof of Mr. Twit's house. The roly-poly bird was up there as well, and the monkeys were in the cage, and the whole lot of them were hooting with laughter at Mr. Twit. "I'll wipe that silly grin off your beak," said Mr. Twit, screaming at all the birds. "I'll get you next time, you filthy, feathery frumps. I'll wring your necks, the whole lot of you, and have you bubbling in a bird pie before the day is over." "How are you going to do that?" asked Mrs. Twit, who had come outside to see what all the noise was. "I won't have you smearing sticky glue all over the roof of our house." Mr. Twit got very excited. "Oh, I've got a great idea," he cried. He didn't bother to keep his voice down because he didn't think the monkeys could understand him. "We'll both go into town right away and we'll buy a big gun each," he shouted. "How's that?" "Brilliant," said Mrs. Twit, grinning and showing off her long yellow teeth. "We'll buy those big shotguns that spray all the bullets, or one with, or more, but, it says spray out 50 bullets or more with each bang." "Exactly," said Mr. Twit. "Lock up the house while I go and make sure the monkeys are safely shut away." Seems interesting that Roald Dahl's put that line in. It's making me think that something's going to happen relating to the house not being locked up. Listen again. He says, "Lock up the house." Oops, I just turned on Siri. Okay. He said, "Lock up the house while I go and make sure the monkeys are safely shut away." Mr. Twit went over to the monkey cage. "Attention!" he barked. "Upside down, all of you. Jump to it. One on top of the other. Quick! Get on with it or you'll feel Mrs. Twit stick across your backsides." Obediently, the poor monkeys stood on their hands and clambered one on top of the other, with Muggle-Wump at the bottom and the smallest child at the very top. "Now stay where you are until we come back," Mr. Twit ordered. "Don't you dare move, and don't overbalance. When we return in 2 or 3 hours' time, I shall expect to find you in exactly the same position as you are now. You understand?" Oh, he's awful, isn't he, Mr. Twit? With that, Mr. Twit marched away. Mrs. Twit went with him, and the monkeys were left alone with the birds, and of course with Roly-Poly Bird. Do you think that they're going to stay there for 3 hours, and then that's going to be the end of that part of the story? It would be a bit of a boring story if Mr. Twit came back and they were all just doing what they were told. I'm going to stop now and give you a chance to think about what you think is going to happen in this story when Mr. Twit and Mrs. Twit go into town to buy guns. What do you think is going to happen?